Yeah, so Rippy Singh is the CEO of Purposeful Innovation Coach, and we'd like to hear what he has to say because obviously he's a practitioner-based enterprise. So Rippy, go ahead. Rippy, I think you're muted, so if you could unmute yourself.
Unmute. Can you hear me?
There you go. Yep.
Good people, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Rippy Singh, and today I have dialed in from Arizona, USA. I'm going to share my screen now. So the topic today is how do we foster purposeful innovation in any enterprise, in any company, in any organization, small, medium, large, wherever. A little bit about myself. I started my career in academics. I was a professor for a while. Then I worked in the industry. And for the last 7 years, since 2014, I'm a freelance innovation coach. I coach all around the world with all sorts of companies. And my coaching practices have now been published in form of books, which are available on Amazon. I have had my share of success and failures, but today I'm focused on why we should innovate, how do we innovate, what should the technology constitute, and I also focus on other aspects, human aspects like ethics, diversity, co-working across cultures, co-working with machines. Let's just briefly talk about the agenda for the next 15 minutes. I will share with you why, how, and what. The purpose of innovation, profile for innovation, and practices for innovation. Then I will show you a map of why with how, and I will also show you a map of how and what. And then I'll combine all three into a single map so that we can look at the profile of a business. We can look at the profile of any entity, whether it's government, private, university, and it should help you discover your gaps, your journey, your path, the changes you need to make within your organization to be a purposeful, innovative organization. Let's look at the industrial revolutions. I think we all know where we are today, so I don't have to spend too much time on this particular aspect. In the second revolution, we became masters of the physical world. In third revolution, we became masters of the digital world. And in the fourth revolution, we are now becoming masters of digital and physical world. We go from physical to digital and digital to physical. Once we can close the loop, this confluence of cyber physical systems is what constitutes the fourth industrial revolution. Why should we do this? You know, sometimes people don't even know why they do it. They are unaware. But there are people who actually say, this is how we get rich. This is how we make money. So you have a financial purpose. And then there are others in the engineering community who do it mainly for the technology reasons. But I would submit that technology, for the sake of technology and money, is not really the purpose. It could be a business objective, but not a business purpose. Purpose should be more towards making things better. Smart homes, smart cities, smart factories, smart manufacturing, smart healthcare, smart education. We want to improve the social life. We want to improve the well-being of humans. So think about that as a purpose. But is that enough? Or is there something more to it? Well, I would say there is one more item here. Think about it. How do we preserve something that's precious? If you own a diamond, how do you preserve? And today, the most precious stone that we have is our planet. And we have to preserve it because there's only one of it. We have no choice. So think about sustainability as a purpose. So here is a model, a hierarchical model for how you should define your innovation purpose. I also understand not everybody can have sustainability as a purpose. It's okay. You can stop at social, but then think of sustainability as a constraint. Even if that's not a purpose, it must be built into the innovation procedure. Because if you think of it, we are all trapped on this planet. There is no planet B. We must sustain this. We must innovate to sustain this. Technology, for the sake of money, I don't call it very good, but for the sake of society and for the sake of planet is the right thing to do. The higher up you go, the better it is. I want you to ask yourself a question: where are you today and where do you want to be? Let's talk about innovation profile. When I was the director of R&D for a Fortune 500 company, I always wondered how innovative we are. And I did not know how to define it. But now I have created a scale, a 5-star scale. 1 star on one end, you are aware of innovation. You did it once, but you did not sustain it. And 5-star is like the Googles and Apple of the world, where you are robust and resilient, and you can handle disruption, and you can handle any change that's coming your way. In fact, you are the one who is driving all the change. And then in between, there are 3 other levels. Level 2 is you are a follower. You innovate in response to demand. Level 3, you forecast what the customer, market, society will ask in the near future, and you innovate in anticipation of it. And then you are amongst the first few in the marketplace with your services, with your products. And level 4 is a visionary trendsetter that creates a product and creates a demand. So there are various examples. I'm sorry, I did not get time to study companies in Kuwait to identify that. My examples are still from the US. The question is again, where are you on this scale today? Where do you want to be? Now, if I were to combine these two, purpose profile, I could actually make a map. Okay, and on that map, you should be able to put a point saying, this is where we are today, and this is where my journey should go. Ideally, everybody wants to be at level 5, but that's not very practical. Even if you get to 4, you will be an exemplary, iconic company. Most startups are visionary trendsetters, and as they begin to grow, they kind of slide down on the scale. And today, majority of the companies are followers of the market, working hard to make money, to meet the bottom line, to just, the focus is lost, the mission is lost, the vision is all lost. It's just become rat race. And those who recognize this can actually turn around, but those who don't will become extinct very soon. And this is what is happening in the market. And every time there is a major shift, whether it is a dot-com burst or it was pandemic now, a whole lot of companies suddenly go extinct. Without doing any detailed analysis, I think BlackBerry had that journey. Google went like that. Chipotle went like this. My practice in the last 7 years has gone like that. So we can all actually think of where we were when we started our practice, where are we today, and where do we want to go? And this can be a very powerful communication tool, alignment tool, strategy building tool, because it's like the North Star. Now, how do we build a profile? There are 4 things that you have to do to build your innovation profile. You need a strategy. You need to know what products and services you will develop. You need capital, and capital here is more than money. It's talent, knowledge, cash, assets, network, everything you can think of. Then innovative activity is the actual execution of the projects. And then I do want to touch upon the topic lean, because you have to make it cost effective. Now, each of these tracks are handled differently by people at different profile, because that's how the profile is defined. The strategy that a follower makes is different than the strategy that a trendsetter makes. And how you make those strategic decisions, how you make your investment decisions, how you make your hiring decisions, they actually depend upon the profile. And there are a bunch of tools that we have used that kind of form this matrix, which helps you define what do you need to do at each profile. And if you want to rebuild a profile, what are the gaps? Here is a framework that over the last few years, we have built and delivered to lots of companies successfully. We actually have also converted this into an ERP type of a system so that entire organization can stay aligned. Somewhere between level 3 and 4 is when you can decide and define that you have achieved the culture of innovation. I can also go and put all of these 3 things together: purpose, profile, and practices. Now that becomes a single framework for purposeful innovation, for meaningful innovation. With that, I will finish my talk and I will say purposeful innovation is the only way to go. Thank you for listening to me.
Well, thank you very much, Rippy. That was very informational, and obviously the global climate crisis is imperative that we all address, and you gave us some steps to be able to do that. So thank you for your thoughtfulness and your presentation.
Thank you.
So again, following the instructions, I'm on security.
Excuse me, Professor. Excuse me, Larry.
Yes.
It's done or not yet? No, we started from our side. Just let our technical support company, it's helping you, okay?
Oh, very good. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to talk about some of the fundamental foundational requirements of being able to create within an ecosystem for entrepreneurship, innovation, creativity. And within the ecosystem, we have communities of practice. There's incubators, there's accelerators. We've heard about from coaches. There are many, many different facets to the ecosystem that are comprised of communities of practice. Under these communities of practice, which include different disciplines, it's many different, I guess, methods and protocols and things that all have to come together at some point. And we heard earlier about trust and ecosystems versus ecosystems. And it really comes down to people need to believe that the associates and the practitioners that are within their network and are working together all subscribe to the same fundamental principles, or the system just does not work. So we're in the middle now, if we change the slide, of looking at best practices. And some of those best practices are due diligence, and I'll define that a little bit later. Risk assessment and mitigation. We have to make sure as we're investing our time, our effort, and funds into a project, into an ecosystem, that we understand what the risks are and that we mitigate them and minimize them as much as possible. On the next slide. Prudent stewardship, and that goes into the activities and the use of resources, human resources, financial resources, organizational and institutional resources. We have to use them wisely. When we develop things that work, and we heard a little bit about replicability and scalability in an earlier session, we want to develop designs and models that can be replicable. Also, a return on investment. We're looking whether it's a social return, whether it's a climate return, whether it's a financial return, whether it's all of them. There are outcomes and deliverables and expectations at the end of or during the process of what we're doing. And I think with one of our last presenters, Mr. Williams from SBA, who talked about the SBIR's TTR program, that is a phased continuum where we're looking at different points and milestones for what is the return on investment, and are we moving closer to our goals and objectives. And then sustainability. Often that's something that's not really designed into the program until it's a little bit farther down the road, and it should be something that is thought of from the very beginning. So best practices. Best practices are a set of guidelines, ethics, ideas that represent the most efficient or prudent course of action in a given business situation. So best practices when it comes to the incubation and acceleration, there is a publication that was put out with the National Business Incubation Association called Incubating Success, Best Practices that Lead to Successful New Ventures. And that's kind of a landmark study. It hasn't been updated. It's about 10 years old, but it has some fundamental principles of the best practices that myself as principal investigator and a team of researchers at the University of Michigan and other institutions dug deep into the ecosystem of business incubators and accelerators. So I would refer anyone to that, Incubating Success. If you Google it, you'll find it at the University of Michigan. Due diligence. Due diligence, it's an investigation, an audit, or review that's performed to confirm the facts or details of a matter under consideration. So if you're going to, for instance, purchase a home, you're going to do your due diligence. You're going to inspect it. You're going to know what the requirements are financially and property ownership, et cetera, et cetera. Either you do that yourself or you hire somebody to do it. But you need to do that also for new ventures and for the entrepreneurial community and what have you. And it requires an examine, again, of financial records before entering into a transaction with another party. And the ecosystem is transactional. You're constantly working with other people. They gain, you gain. Hopefully it's a win-win situation, but the due diligence is critical. Next slide, please. Risk assessment and mitigation. That is a process to identify the risk factors that the potential to cause harm, that if they do occur, they can impede or even cancel what you're trying to achieve. So you need to identify them, assess them, evaluate the risk, and then develop methods and protocols and safeguards against the risks that are always present in a venture. And there are 4 different or 5 different areas: qualitative risk assessments, quantitative that you can quantify, generic that are common to in many cases, and site specific. We'll move on to the next slide. Prudent stewardship. So prudent stewardship is a process of being very discreet and cautious in managing professional activities. You want to be circumspect. You want to go with the evidence, not with your feelings or your emotion or your wishful thinking, magical thinking, as they sometimes say. You want to be practical and careful in the use of public funding when that is available, and if not, it's private sector funding. You have investors for the programs or projects or initiatives that you're launching, and exercising good judgment and common sense. Within each one of these, so I'm going to stop just for a second and say, as I go through these things, prudent stewardship, there's a whole set of principles within the concept of prudent stewardship, or the best practice of prudent stewardship, that are not necessarily well defined and not necessarily defined across the disciplines and the different communities of practice. So what I'm working with the team with the International Business Innovation Association, and you'll hear from Charles Ross, I think tomorrow, maybe a little bit more about this. But we've put together a proposed project to really identify, validate, analyze, and then disseminate principles of practice under these best practices that will let most organizations adhere to them in a consistent and unified manner. And we think that's very important for the ecosystem for creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, etc. Sustainability, the capacity and capability for a program or system to be funded and maintained at a required rate or level. For instance, with the SBIRSTT, our program, Small Business Innovation Research Program that was talked about earlier, they'll fund you for a phase 2 grant up to $250,000. And if that's successful, the phase 3 up to $1,700,000. But then you're on your own. Then you need to get into the commercial marketplace. You may have to find other sources of private sector funding. But the important thing is to build in sustainability early on, so you have a plan of, okay, when my federal funding or when my first round of angel investment runs out, how am I going to be, what is my path towards self-sufficiency? So sustainability is a critical element that needs to come in to the equation at an early part of the initiative. Moving on to the next slide. Replicability, that's being able to copy or reproduce what you've done. You have a model, it's working. So the reliability of replicability is fundamentally required, because if you want to grow and advance both from a business point of view, as well from an organizational point of view, as well from a communities of practice point of view, you have to have a model that can be replicated and obtain a consistent result. If you follow this model, if you follow these guidelines, if you follow the path or the playbook that we've created, then you will end up achieving the results that we have in the first model. And scalability, that's the capacity to be changed in size or scale to be successful as a smaller or a larger initiative with the same characteristics, with the same outcomes, the same deliverables, the same return on investment. So how do you replicate it? And then how do you scale it up? Two very important factors of a successful design. Moving on. So we have communities of practice that have roles of responsibility. Within those communities, we have principles of practice, and across those communities, we have principles of practice that, again, we think are not quite as well defined and well engraved, and maybe not as well taught in the practitioner ecosystem. So we think that by defining them and validating them and analyzing them, and then making them to be able to be applied by practitioners in different communities of practice is a very important undertaking. The practitioners are the guardians, if you will, of the professions and disciplines that make up the ecosystem. So on an individual basis, as a practitioner, it's your responsibility, and to a certain extent, there is a liability involved, that you are responsible for the success or failure or of the adherence to best practice, the ethics, the principles of practice for what you're trying to achieve. So again, this is foundational. It's kind of the bedrock upon which the ecosystem resides. And we think that it's time for this to be brought to the fore, to be examined, and to be codified to the extent that it can to apply to the different facets of practice within the communities of practice. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on. We have next Dr. Abdullah Adarba, who is the CEO of Social Responsibility for the Amat Company. And Dr. Abdullah, welcome, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Welcome. Sorry, let me speak in Arabic. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يعني I can share. اوكي، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. طبعا شكرا لكم حقيقه على هذه الدعوه، اشكر الدكتوره هنادي وجميع الفريق العمل على هذه الدعوه اللي تشرفت فيها، ويعني اتمنى ان اقدم ماده تكون مفيده ومعلومات تكون ان شاء الله يعني مفيده، ولي الشرف حقيقه ان اتواجد مع هذه القامات القامات الكبيره في تقديم ماده ثريه وتكون مفيده باذن الله سبحانه وتعالى. يعني سأتكلم في ورقه اليوم عن مناهج الابتكاريه واستخدام المناهج الابتكاريه في تدريس رياده الاعمال والابداع. نحن في المملكه العربيه السعوديه نشهد في رؤيه 2030 هذه الرؤيه الطموحه التي ستنقل المملكه الى ان تكون من الدول المؤثره والدول التي لها يعني شأن كبير في موضوع ريادة الأعمال. إذا أعطيكم رقم بسيط، نحن اليوم في المملكة العربية السعودية عدد العاملين في القطاع الحكومي والخاص ما يقارب 3 مليون شخص ما بين ذكر وأنثى. عدد العاملين في العمل الحر، والعمل الحر عندنا في السعودية يختلف عن عمل التجاري الرسمي. العمل الحر هم رواد الأعمال الهواة، هؤلاء يمثلون أكثر من 600,000 شخص ما بين ذكر وأنثى. فهذا يدل على التوجه الكبير لدينا في المملكة العربية السعودية في الاهتمام بريادة الأعمال. طبعا تحليل المفاهيم ريادة الأعمال لدينا في بداية العرض، واعتقد أنكم تكلمتم فيها في عرضكم. هل الصوت واضح؟ تكلمنا اولا الابداع. هو الابداع حقيقه هو مقدره الشخص على تطوير افكار جديده وفق احتياجات العملاء او السوق، وقد يكون الابداع هذا تكنولوجي او في اي منتج اخر، ويعتبر الابداع ميزه تنافسيه للمنظمات. وياتي ايضا بعد الابداع الابتكار، يعني وهو قدره الشخص على ايجاد فكره او اسلوب او مفهوم جديد ينفذها باسلوب غير مألوف لدى الافراد الاخرين على ان تتناسب مع قدراته وامكانيات العملاء. رياده الاعمال مثل ما قالت المركز الامريكي للتعليم الريادي بانها العمليه التي تعد الافراد بمفاهيم ومهارات معينه تمكنهم من ادراك الفرص التي يغفل عنها الاخرون، والتمتع برؤيه جديه وتقدير للذات وتزويد الافراد بالمعلومات المطلوبه. لا يخفى عليكم ان تعليم رياده الاعمال شهد تطورا ملحوظا في السنوات الاخيره وفي العقود الماضيه، وكانت طبعا الجامعات او يعني المحاضن العلميه هي التي بدات في تدريس رياده الاعمال بعد ان كان يعني مفهوما خاصا بالقطاع الخاص، اصبح انتقل الى دور الجامعات والمدارس في اعداد الجيل من رواد الاعمال المبتكرين. المناهج الابتكاريه والابداعيه تعتبر وسيله هامه لتحفيز الروح المبادره، لانها تشعر الفرد بالاستقلال والثقه بالنفس وتهيئ لخيارات عديده وعلى توسيع آفاق رواد الأعمال للإبداع والابتكار. المفتاح الحقيقي لريادة الأعمال هو التعليم الذي ينبغي يتضمن مناهجه دروسا عن ريادة الأعمال، وإعداد جيل من رواد الأعمال ينتهج منهج الإبداع والابتكار. خلال السنوات الماضية شهدت هناك جهود حثيثة في تعميم ثقافة الإبداع والابتكار، ناهيك عن جعل هدف تمكين الإبداع والابتكار عاملا مشتركا. أيضا وصل مفهوم ريادة الأعمال اكتسب في السنوات الأخيرة أهمية بارزة حتى في الأوساط الرسمية والأهلية، نظرا لدوره في التنمية المستدامة، وكذلك دوره في إشراك مختلف الفئات السكانية في الإحراك الاقتصادي، وخاصة الشباب والفتيات، وإبراز الدور الإرادي المتنامي لهذه الفئة، وخاصة في مجتمعاتنا التي يغلب عليها الشباب. الإبداع والابتكار هما أهم أبعاد ريادة الأعمال، وهي من أهم الصفات التي يجب أن تتوافر في رائد الأعمال، فلا يمكن أن نسمي رائد أعمال ما لم يكن يمتلك صفة الإبداع والابتكار. أيضا الابتكار هو له دور فعال باعتباره واحد من محركات النمو الاجتماعي والاقتصادي وتحسين الإنتاجية وترسيخ خطوات التحول نحو التنمية الاجتماعية، بالإضافة إلى دوره في مواجهة تحديات تواجه الحكومات والشركات. نحن اليوم في دول العالم المتقدم نشهد أن تحولت الأصول سابقا من أصول عقارية وأصول أو ممتلكات محسوسة إلى أصول غير محسوسة. مثلا إذا تكلمنا عن علامة مثل أبل التي قيمتها تتجاوز $1,000,000,000، علامة مثل أرامكو السعودية قيمتها تتجاوز $250 مليار، فهذه كلها ابتكارات وإبداعات غير محسوسة أصبحت تحولت إلى ميزة تنافسية أو قيمة تمتلكها الشركات. في الفترة الأخيرة المملكة العربية السعودية توجهت نحو إدراج مناهج تعليمية في المرحلة الثانوية والجامعية تتعلق بفكر ريادة الأعمال والاقتصاد المعرفي، وتشجيع الطلبة أثناء دراستهم على طرح أفكار إبداعية ثم بلورتها من خلال الجامعات أو حتى الجهات المختصة وتحويلها لمشروعات فعلية. أيضا المناهج الجامعية اليوم تغيرت، بدل ما كانت أسلوب النمطي التقليدي أصبحت تعتمد على التفكير الإبداعي. ونحن نعلم أن في عام 2016-17 عاد من الابتعاث الخارجي أكثر من 100,000 طالب وطالبة سعودي من الابتعاث الخارجي. هؤلاء أحدثوا نقلة نوعية في التعليم الجامعي لدينا، وأصبحت التعليم الجامعي يعتمد على أساليب تنمية وسمات المبدعين وكيف تحفيزها. أيضا أنشأت المملكة العربية السعودية حاضنات ومسرعات الأعمال سواء في الجامعات أو خارج الجامعات، وهدفها احتضان أصحاب الأفكار الإبداعية والريادية وتوفير المناخ الملائم لرعايتهم والاهتمام بهم. أيضا المملكة العربية السعودية اهتمت بفتح تخصصات جديدة في الجامعات لدراسة ريادة الأعمال وتوفير قيادات أكاديمية متخصصة للتدريس في هذا المجال. أنفقت المملكة العربية السعودية في رؤية 2030 ستضاعف البحث والتطوير، أو نسبة الإنفاق على البحث والتطوير ستتضاعف وتصبح تساوي 3 أضعاف الناتج القومي المحلي السعودي. وهذا حقيقة سيحدث تحول كبير في الاقتصاد الوطني والاستثمار الاجتماعي. أيضا المملكة العربية السعودية عملت على توفير بيئة تشجيعية للإبداع على مواصلة الإبداع ومواصلة المبدعين. واليوم المملكة العربية السعودية تشهد إنشاء أكثر من 6 مدن إبداعية تقنية حديثة ستعمل على استقطاب هؤلاء المبدعين والاستفادة منهم. أخيراً المملكة العربية السعودية تواكب التطورات التكنولوجية بامتلاك وسائل تقنية حديثة ومبتكرة للقيام بعمليات ريادية في صناعة المبادرات واستعمالها كميزة تنافسية في المستقبل. وأخيراً خلق ثقافة وبيئة ريادية أعمال تحفيزية وتفاعلية وإدراج مناهج وتخصصات جديدة في ريادة الأعمال. المملكة العربية السعودية اليوم هي من أكبر الاقتصاديات في الشرق الأوسط، وتعمل على أن تكون، ونحن نعلم أنها من ضمن 20 اقتصاد مؤثر في العالم، وتعول كثيرا على شبابها وبناتها ليكونوا نواة الاقتصاد. وحسب رؤية المملكة 2030 ستكون المملكة العربية السعودية إن شاء الله ثالث بلد في ضمن دولة جي 20. شكرا لاستماعكم. إذا في أي ملاحظات أو استفسارات أسعد بذلك غاية السعادة.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ardabra. I think that talking about youth and younger populations and curriculum and education is a starting point for a lot of the practitioners and the entrepreneurs that come out of the universities with some of the fundamentals and then bring them into practice and apply them. So that's a very important component within the ecosystem. And it's good to hear that these things are occurring not just in my country, the United States, but globally. And I'm sure with different cultures and different initiatives that we can all learn from each other. And there are not just within a country communities of practice, but I think increasingly globally there are communities of practice. We heard from the director at Cambridge earlier today with their technology park, and there are technology parks growing up in the Mideast and in many other developing countries. So the more that we can bring communities and principles and education and common understandings into the ecosystem, the stronger it'll be and the more successful it will be. So I'm not sure, are we moving on to anybody else who will be speaking in this session, or are we kind of at a roundtable point in the timetable? Well, I'm going to assume that we have a little time for discussion here.
Excuse me.
So, yes.
So there was a session from my side, so don't know when it is planned. As per the agenda, it's at it's just now.
So you have a presentation and
I have a presentation which was shared 2 days back with the team. So my name is Srinivas, and my session is at 9:20 p.m. Kuwait time. That is 13:20 p.m. EST.
Well, we'd be very interested in hearing what you have to present, sir.
Yeah, thank you. It's a 10-minute session, so I'll do it quick. Do I have the sharing rights, please?
Yes, you can share your screen.
Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you all for giving me this opportunity. This is Srinivas from India. It's midnight time now, so wishing all good morning, good afternoon, as per the time zones you're operating from. And I work with a IT company called Tech Mahindra, which is a $5 billion IT company with about 140,000 associates. I lead the innovation management track, entrepreneurship, and startup ecosystem collaboration track there at Tech Mahindra. I operate from Pune, India. So today, one of the points I wanted to discuss was how do we operate in this VUCA world? And VUCA is something that has been talked about for a long time. It started with the American War College talking about it during the end of the Cold War, where they found out that the world is not the same as before. It's moved from two poles to a multilateral world, wherein you have volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguousness. And from there, the word VUCA was used at different times by different industries. And since 2000, the IT industry has been using it. Now, in the year, as we come to 2020 and 21, where we've been reeling under COVID, this word VUCA becomes very important. And I'll just delve a little more into what VUCA is. What we are saying is that the world that we all live in, the environment that we all live in, or the ecosystem that we all live in, is quite volatile, where it has been changing and the rate of change has been very rapid. And second one, that it's been very uncertain, so that you cannot predict what will happen 2 years down the line, 6 years down the line, with so many things happening. And because of the interdependency of multiple components in this ecosystem, it has become more and more complex. And the last point of it is that, like earlier times, it has not been a black and white story. Things are quite in gray. Things are quite ambiguous. We would not know what the end result will be, even if we have all the information in place. So the VUCA world, the word that is consistently used, becomes more relevant, more important in this journey, in these times that we are all living. Now, how it has impacted us all. If you look at how entrepreneurship happened, or how incubators were set up in the last 10, 15 years, starting with Silicon Valley, and then we had incubators across all parts of the world, including the Middle East, India, Israel, and a lot of places. The incubators were places where actually ideators, students came up and actually huddled in one place. So it started with giving a physical place to a set of people who had an idea, who wanted to create a POC and then scale it. The other parts or the other objectives that the incubator actually fulfilled for the ideators was to give them mentorship, was to give them access to venture capitalists, to seed capitalists, so, and different sources of funding. It is to also connect them to collaborators who could take their idea to market. So that was the way in which the incubators thrived across the world. But COVID-19 actually changed everything and people had to be at home. What we have seen is that in the last 2 years, or at least in the last 18 months, we have seen that in this situation, we've had virtual incubators coming up globally. And I'm very happy to say that along with India and other parts of the world, there have been virtual incubators in the Middle East. So you have Faster Capital, you have Takadam in KSA, you have Astro Labs, and we have VO, which is one of the key virtual incubator in Kuwait. So we've seen that, as you rightly said, all parts of the world have actually started reacting to COVID, adjusting themselves to the situation and creating better opportunities for the ideators. Now, what has happened in this virtual incubation centers is that you would have people operating from different parts of the country, different parts of the city, not looking for a place in incubator, but who've got a good idea and looking for other parts of a startup. It could be a mentorship, it could be guidance on how do they actually trade, how do they collaborate, how do they access to funds. So these virtual incubators have really helped. In our entrepreneurship system that we do in our company, we've actually mentored startups in 5 different places across the world, 5 different ideas across the world, sitting in Pune in India. So what we have found out is that the tools that are required, better communications, better communication tools, better internet speed, have now become order of the day across the world. So we've seen that people are able to communicate, people are able to talk to different experts across the world. And this COVID thing has now been overcome. But the next question is that 6 months down the line, hoping that everything goes well in COVID, how do people respond? Do we have only virtual incubators? Do we have physical incubators? Or do we have a unique combination of both physical and virtual incubators? The answer is that we would require both of them. Physical incubators was where people could huddle together in one room, discuss it through and through, have mentors come at one place, or have a Shark Tank done by them at one place. So the advantages of both physical and virtual will remain. We've been talking to multiple colleges in the Middle East to see how we can skill some of their students and do hackathons to take some of their best ideas and incubate them in their own centers, yet train them from different parts of the world through our company. We've also been talking to leading companies in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where they are interested to create a bouquet of fintech startups in Saudi. Plus, they are also willing to invest in startups across the world, which are ready to use Saudi as a base and scale up. So I think what we have seen is that the both traditional and virtual services will remain in vogue. It will all depend on what percentage each ideator will use depending on the situation he's in. I just wanted to give one example, and this is my last slide, where we, Tech Mahindra as a company, was asked by the Indian High Commission to help Bangladesh do a national hackathon. So we took the challenge. Tech Mahindra talked to the officials of Bangladesh in Dhaka, tried to understand what they're trying to do. So they had 10 different problem statements which they had identified on frontier technologies, and they wanted to identify the top 10 ideas, top 10 startups in the country, and they wanted Tech Mahindra to, or take somebody from India to actually mentor them and take those ideas to the next level. So Tech Mahindra as a partner to that project, actually we went to Dhaka, did that entire national level hackathon, shortlisted the top 10 ideas, and then the agreement was that they'll come to Pune, India, where we'll train them on multiple skills and help them actually develop their POC. This happened in February 2019, and then COVID kicked in, February 2020, sorry, and then COVID kicked in. So what we did is we changed the entire tack. We said this entire startups will mentor them virtually for a period of 1 year. So over a period of 1 year, we trained them on latest technologies in AI, AR, VR, and IoT, depending on the skills required for the project. We actually provided them soft skills, communication skills, and sales skills. And we also provided them an idea of how to approach VCs and all. Today, those 10 startups have actually matured, created their POCs, and are in a good position to take it to the globe. What we've also agreed is that once the India-Bangladesh bubble gets approved for travel, they'll still come to India, meet us, meet our sales guys, connect with them. We have offices in 90 countries across the world, and see how they can take some of their ideas globally. So this is an example of how we could convert a physical incubator to a virtual incubator and help the students. So I think that's it from our side. Only point I wanted to emphasize is that each country, each college is making efforts to ensure that they create an ecosystem for the students, whether virtually or physically. But depending on the situation, the student would get an access to them. But it is in our interest to create a good ecosystem for ideas to thrive and come to a logical conclusion. That's all from my side. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, Srinivas. I made some notes as you were talking, and I think that the concept of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity is even more apparent and present, if you will, since maybe the initial concept was initiated because of COVID. And I think that there are still a lot of unanswered challenges ahead of us, and also many opportunities. Actually, maybe the silver lining in COVID is that it really forced us as practitioners and as an ecosystem and a global ecosystem to go virtual and rely more on professional relationships rather than maybe personal relationships, because people aren't meeting face to face and having a cup of coffee or a glass of beer or something after the sessions are over. We go back to our home desks and working remotely, but that does provide opportunities, as you said, for global mentorship, and many incubators and accelerators have entrepreneurs and residents, and they literally come into the facility and sit there. Well, you don't do that anymore. So would that enable someone to be able to mentor or be in residence at multiple sites? So I wondered if you had some thoughts about where we would be post-pandemic with the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity.
So I think, as they say, the only solution to a VUCA world is you have the same VUCA as vision, understanding, clarity, and adaptability and agility. The same 4 words, you tackle it with a vision that is there beyond, like you have a long-term vision where the small-term hurdles don't impact you. You have an understanding, try to understand how the situation is happening, a little more clarity on your thoughts on how you want to go. And the final and the most important thing that everybody needs at this point of time is adaptability and agility. And coming back to your question, what will happen post-COVID is I see that people will be more eager to come back to their physical places, as you were saying, where they could actually huddle in one place, which is their comfort area, and still use some of the virtual channels to connect with the best people across the globe. Yeah, so there'll be a mix of it.
Kind of the hybrid model.
Hybrid model, yes.
Yeah. So just another observation, because we're reaching the end of our session. But last year I participated with Dr. Hanadi on the first conference, the 2020 conference, which was virtual. And now we're here a year later with a much more comprehensive, much more broader, many different topic areas, maybe many different presentations, much more rich content, which really has established Dr. Hanadi as a pioneer in the virtual world. I don't know of any other conferences that have achieved this over the past couple of years. My congratulations, and I thank all of us who are participating.
Thank you, Professor Larry. Thank you for your support and participation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for all the speakers. It is our honor to have you in this largest practitioner conference. Again, remind, our conference is not an academic conference. Our conference is a practitioner conference, while I'm focusing me and you and all the speakers to building the ecosystem for our country. Specifically innovation ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystem, artificial intelligence ecosystem, and technology ecosystem as a vital and powerful tool for 21st century. And everybody realize the outcomes for the innovation, helping the nation from the death by identify the vaccine and to helping all the nation for this vaccine. And this vaccine is the outcomes from the innovation centers and from the innovation lab. Without innovation, we cannot survive. And on the other hand, the innovation is now supported with the AI, which helping the nation also to find the solution within 9 months from the pandemic. And this is reflecting the importance of our conferences, the importance of the innovation ecosystem. We need everybody through the world need to helping the nation to survive and to be in the better life. Okay, thank you so much also, Professor Larry. We hope to staying with us for the next track. You can hand over for Dr. Martina. I think that Dr. Martina will take care about next track.